YouTube channel. This is Tea with Aru, and today I have a special guest. I mean, my special friend, my gorgeous friend, Lutho. Lutho, do you want to introduce yourself? Like, who are you, and yeah, what are you about? And
Yeah, that's very hard. I'll just be simple. My name is Lutho, and that's it. I love Jesus, I love life, and I love my people, and yeah, that's it.
So yeah, guys, today we just thought that we should discuss like we're going to be addressing issues around mental health, but we're going to look at like, can mental health become our identity? Mental illness, can we make that our identity? Can we, how far is too far? And where do you find the balance, and like where do you find the common ground? And also like how that looks like in our faith, because as she said, she's a Christian, I'm also a Christian. So we're also going to be discussing how that looks like in our faith, and also we're going to be talking about labels, like in terms of diagnosis, like when people get this different diagnosis, like we're going to just share our views on that. So Lutho, I think for me, maybe my first question will be, do you think someone can make mental illness their identity? And if you think so, how will that look like?
This is I need to go back for this because obviously mental health and issues of mental health have risen to everyone's notice, and they're everywhere in social medias, on all platforms. Everyone's talking about it. But I think before that, when it was starting and when people were trying to almost like debunk all the stereotypes that are attached to it, then people who were affected by mental health or have mental health issues, it seemed as though they were trying to own it, and by doing that, it was almost like, oh yeah, you know me and my depression, or you know me with my anxiety, things like that. And I suppose at the time it was needed in order to normalize it, and for the people themselves to feel like this is something that's normal and open, and I do not need to be ashamed of it. However, that was then. And I think now with like all the trends coming around, that it can sometimes seem, and I'm speaking from a complete outsider's perspective, not that I don't have mental issues, that it now seems like it's something that consumes a person and becomes like who they are and what they're known for. And I'm not sure whether that is an issue, because people are what they advocate for. Like if you are, that's the spiritual African spirituality girl, like people will call you that because that's what you advocate for and that's what you're always talking about. In terms of identity, it's hard. I think I'd have to say maybe not necessarily, or no, because I think it becomes part of you, and it becomes it almost like it's attached to who you are in so many ways that it becomes part of your identity. So I think it would be unfair to say that people have made it their identity and then to identify that as something that's wrong or negative. I just think if it's part of who you are, and it's like almost like woven in every single part of your life, then it does form part of your identity, and I think that's okay.
Oh, that's so great. I remember I was reading this other girl's thread, and she was just talking about how people now, they kind of like idolize the situation, and not necessarily idolize it, but like it's like they can't stop until they're perfect. And I think she was like, her view was just was that maybe we don't have to be perfect, like maybe you won't be completely, like you won't be where you really want to be at the time maybe you want to be. Maybe it can take you long, or whatever that looks like for you, like in your healing journey. So but for me, I think my take on that was just trying to understand, to say, when I'm trying to help, or when I'm trying to deal with a mental illness, I need to understand that at the end of the day, I'm still human. That's why sometimes you find that today you're victorious. Today you're able to do things, you're able to not feel so sad under, and then the following day you're feeling like you went 10 step back. So I think for me, it's just like surrounding or like doing that with a lot of grace from self, to say, give myself so much grace to say it's not like I would always get it right. Some days I will wake up and I feel like I'm doing well mentally, but some days I will wake up and feel like, but I thought I was getting this thing right. Why am I going backwards?
Yeah.
And sometimes it does not really mean that you're going back. It feels like it, but it does not necessarily mean that you're going backwards. And in terms of identity, I think you said something that is very important to say. It's gonna form part of who you are, because this is the illness that now you're dealing with. It's almost as if it's part of your everyday life. And I think I've realized that when we discuss these topics also, we forget that it's broad. Like, you might be battling some mental issues because maybe you just encountered a very stressful situation, or you just lost someone that you love. I might be battling the situation because I had a childhood trauma, and that is different. How I'm going to present symptoms of whether depression or anxiety, whatever that is going to be different from you. So I think we also need to address that, to say it's not like we must not just say it as if it's one thing. There's a whole there's an umbrella, and then there's everything. Like,
that's true.
Yes, it's very broad, and it differ from one person to the next. And I think maybe it's just a matter of getting enough information even before we talk about it, because sometimes I feel like if someone read that thread that I read without a full understanding, they would just feel like, oh, maybe I should stop healing. Or I don't want to idolize it. I don't want to make it my identity. Maybe I should just stop. So, but that person probably had a different view when they say what they said. That's why I'm like, even for you as an individual, if you want to go on a healing journey, you need to have the right information. You need to get the right information from people that are trained. I mean, there's been years and years of research around mental illness. So yeah, Lutho, I think the next thing that I want to ask you is, now with faith.
Yes.
Like, how does that, like, when you look at it now, I mean, you see it everywhere, like even in churches now, they're preaching about it. Other people are still a bit like, no, you just trust God, just pray,
Be faithful.
Yes. Exactly. So, but now when you look at it, what's your view on that? Like,
faith versus mental health. It's funny how it's funny how we make it one against the other, or one versus the other, because from my understanding of the Bible, it's one thing. I mean, the Bible is, yes, it's not explicit or very like, this is what mental health is and this is what you deal with it. But if you read through the Bible, that's exactly what it is. Like, we always refer back to your Psalms and your Proverbs and be like, oh, he was so vulnerable and so open. What was he talking about? He was talking about his struggles, and he was being open about them, and he was dealing with them, and he was presenting them before God as they are, and he was healing. And even when he was having setbacks, or the writer were having setbacks, that it was that, oh, I thought I was doing so well with you, God, and I had recovered, but here it comes again. Paul talks about the thorn on my flesh. There's so many things, and the Bible talks about, do not be anxious about anything, but through prayer and petition present your gift before God. And if you go back, I mean, I'm not a psychology expert or psychiatry or any of that, but if you go back, those principles are principles that in some ways kind of overlap with principles that people use in the medical practice dealing with these things. So I really don't think that it's a faith versus mental health. It's part of us.
Yeah.
Like, God knew we were going to struggle. God knew it was rough in the world. And he set tools to say, let's help one another. And he also gave people the brains to come up with certain tools that may be outside of the scope of the Bible, but it says everything that's good comes from God. So it's not like, are we going to say, oh no, but should I go to the doctor for surgery because I need to be faithful? It's the exact same thing. So I think we should not make it, especially as believers, especially as people of faith, as a mental health versus faith, and to say it's one thing, it's all working together for the good of those who love God. And then if we think of it that way, how can I faithfully tap into the situation? How can I faithfully heal? How can I faithfully, open those closets that I've had closed for years? So I think they're things that work together, and they're not, science versus Christianity or science versus faith. Science is from God. If you open the Bible, there's plenty of science. So I think it's the same thing with mental health. I think we should stop making these things as though they are in contradiction, or it's one versus the other, but to say, hey, God has given you tools, how do you use them faithfully? Right? And then it's hard to use faith in order, because sometimes we put faith forward because we're scared and we don't know how to deal with certain things. So we just like shut everything out and say, no, pray and be faithful. But at the end of the day, you're not dealing with these real issues. Whereas God is a person that wants to heal us holistically. We need to love him with all our strength, all our mind, and all of our soul. That's the holistic being. And he said mind for a reason. He said mind. So that's my take on it, that we should stop making it this versus this and just allow these two to work together.
Sure. Yeah. So much wisdom. Yeah, you said a lot of things that are so true, and I think it's this kind of conversations that I need to be, out. They need to be out there, and people need to change their views and their perspective. Because for me personally, I remember when I had to process my trauma, and because I had a traumatic childhood, so having to process that trauma, being a Christian, seeing a therapist who's not a Christian, it was a very challenging space for me to navigate. But I always had to remind myself to say, at the end of the day, I need to remember where I stand with God and who God is in my life and what I believe he can do for me, and that is not just all dull and all dark, that there is a God, as much as it was dark, but there was that bit of a hope to say there is a God who's going to see me through this situation. Yes, I'm going to have to navigate with this therapist because I believe there is a level of wisdom that God is going to give her, and also her having to do this degree for so long, there's so much that she learned, that she's able to help, even her experiences with helping other people with trauma, that she will be able to help me in some ways, and really just putting God first in there, to say, even praying, to say, it was then I was a young Christian, but now, even before I go see a therapist, I pray for God to guide me, to lead me to a person that will be able to help me how God will want that person to help me. So I feel like when you are a person of faith, then it's like your faith is everything. So like everything in your life is guided by that, to say God is the main person in this story. Yes, is the one who's eventually going to deliver me. But of course, he put these things. He allows me to step into these platforms so that I can be able to get the necessary help that I can get. Because honestly, when I look back, I'm like, this is really God. He exposed me to this space. He allowed me to see this therapist. He allowed me to join this support group. And I gained so much help and so much strength and so much wisdom and so much, I feel mental stable, and I feel I'm even capable to help other people by sharing my stories, which is something that if this was 10 years back, I wouldn't even be able to do this, because back then I couldn't even identify what was what. So I think as people of faith, we really need to understand that, to say God allows these spaces to happen for a reason, like you're saying, to say, why are these things there? At the end of the day, even when someone has a disease, we'll encourage them to go see a specialist or whoever can help them with that, but we'll be praying with them, just so that we, at the end of the day, God is the one who's in charge and who's the one who's powerful. Because some people even get diagnosis where they're told that they will live for 3 months, but the doctor can actually tell you that miracles do happen, so you can pray. But what I'm seeing from what I studied and my research, depending on whether that person is a person of faith or they believe in any form of miracles or prayers, they can tell you that miracles do happen, but this was from what I've learned, you might die in 3 months, and then you'll have people in your life that are gonna pray with you. Same with mental illness. There are certain people that maybe they're not people of faith, where they they can't even see how you're gonna get through that, or you're gonna have to rely maybe on medication for the rest of your life. Not to say there's anything wrong with medication, but like when someone tells you that you're going to rely on something like that for the rest of your life, it might be a bit, but if you're a person of faith, then you can be like, I'm going to pray about this because I don't want to rely on medication for the rest of my life, or I don't want to struggle with this for the rest of my life, that God is going to help me, and at the end of the day, I'll be delivered. At the end of the day, this thing will be able to be under control. So I think as people of faith, let's not just look at things as black and white. Let's try to understand, let's try to navigate. Even when a person comes and say, I think I'm struggling with depression, You might be a pastor of the church, you might be a leader of the church. You don't know everything. You can't just dismiss someone's situation. Just like someone will come and say, I have an infection of some sort. The doctor told me yesterday. You won't say, let's pray it away. You will want to understand, and you will want to maybe see if they can find someone who is a doctor who can help them. Same with mental illness. Like in the church, encourage people seeing therapists. Encourage people allowing to get the necessary help that they need, because you will sweep things under the carpet, and people are battling every day, and some people take their lives because they just feel like they hit the wall, and they don't know if God is even for them.
Yeah, and I think just even with what she's saying, if we make it our point to always be humble and to understand that we don't know everything and we don't have all the answers. Because when you start from that point of humility, then you're open. You're more open to what's out there. You're more open to kind of even hearing God direct you in a different path than what you thought. So I think if we humble, especially as people who have influence over other people, that if we humble and admit we don't know everything and we need help, and to understand like God is there to give everyone, even ourselves, knowledge in order to equip us to kind of deal with life as it comes. So I think that's the first point. Like if we approach everything with humility and reverence, then we allow God to help. And I think it becomes a problem when we really think we know it all, and then we set all these boundaries and become impediments to people's health. I mean, people have suffered in the past, and we need to learn, or else we'll repeat it, because people told them, no, in this church, as people of faith, we don't take medication. In this faith, as people who believe in God, we don't do A, B, and C. So you might have sugar diabetes, you might have high blood pressure, but you can't take your medication because people are telling you in faith. But you go back in the Bible and you're like, oh, is that all that there is? Did God not give people tools in addition or supplementary to prayer? What does it say? It said prayer without action is what? It's dead. So what does that action look like? So I think if, like what you're saying, like if we humble ourselves, especially as leaders, like you say, if people humble themselves to say, hey, I don't know everything, let me seek wisdom, then there will be a solution. And God, I really believe in all wisdom, will give you wisdom in order to help people as best as you can, and to use the tools that He's provided for us here on earth.
That is so true. Yeah, that is so true. This leads me to my last question. Let's talk about labels. People like saying, oh, I mean, they like using labels, and you're giving people labels. You're saying someone is bipolar, someone is this, is that. What do you think about that? Do you think it's bad? Do you think it could be done differently? Like, what are your views?
Labels are hard, especially if you're an outsider. Like, it even talks to racial issues that we're struggling with today. To say, oh, do I have a problem with someone saying, oh, you're black, or as black people? Like, like is that something that, if being black is something I am proud of and I identify as, then I don't mind someone saying, oh, you're black, or you're a woman. But I think sometimes when you use those terms to kind of perpetuate things that are negative, or like using certain stereotypes, then I'm hurt. Oh, you black people, you can dance more. Like it depends how I feel towards that, because it can make me feel like, oh, okay, like, is that what you think of me? So I think it's the same thing with mental health. I think we should open it up to people that are bipolar, or that do have maybe ADHD and all those things, to ask them like how, maybe even in a personal space, to ask like if I refer maybe to you in this way, or do I offend you when I say as a person who is battling depression? Like, it's to so I think we should ask the people that we do interact with in order to gather from them if that's something they are comfortable or not. The same way that we as black people say to people of other races that actually, I'm not okay with that term, or I'm not okay with you saying that, or that's a microaggression. So I think in the same way, and even like I follow this guy, he's a quadriplegic, and he was saying this other time that he was at an airport, and he was at an airport, and a little child came to him and started asking questions. Like, why are you on a chair? Why aren't you walking? Right? And he said the mom came and literally grabbed the child and said, don't ask those questions, don't do that. And then he said to the mom, "Hey, sorry, no disrespect, but it's okay. Allow her to ask me the questions because it's something that she sees that's almost like different from her normal day to day. And she's not asking out of ill intent or even ignorance. Ignorance, yo, guys, ignorance can hurt people.
It's a thing.
Yo. So allow her to ask because she's asking innocent and she's trying to understand. And so I'm saying when it comes from that approach, I think it's okay. But when we start making a thing to say, no, don't mention depression. She's in the room. Like then you see, then we start making people uncomfortable. So but also I think like if all you see is me being black, I'm offended. Or all you see is I'm a woman and you see limitations because I'm a woman, then it becomes an issue. So if someone is suffering from anxiety or depression or battling anxiety or depression and that's all you see, that is not all they are. There's other facets to who they are. So I think it becomes a problem when we use labels in that form, that's all you are. All I see is your anxiety. Then it becomes a problem.
Yeah, that is so true. And I think that's why people kind of like shy away from it because they feel like that's how you're gonna see me. I'm bipolar to you, and that's it.
And everything you say,
everything
like,
that's
it's her bipolar.
You see?
Oh,
yes. And that time maybe it's your personality. That time you're just that kind of a person, you know. And maybe people they just don't want to be reduced to a mental illness, and then they battle with those labels. And I think that's just my view to say when people are doing research, they're trying to understand things, so they come with these terms to manage so that they're able to understand these things. Like even though there's still like gaps still in there, you know, to say there's certain diagnoses where they feel like okay maybe like this symptom shouldn't be under this, they shouldn't be under that because then you can misdiagnose people. But I think it's still an ongoing research, of course, and this is just so that people are able to manage these illnesses, that we're able to be able to put, like, you know, when you put a name to something, sometimes it's easier for you to be able to understand it better, you know. And I feel like scientists come up with these things for that reason, not to say you want to just label a person to be that, whatever that is. Like when I say I have diabetes, let's say I don't have diabetes, but let's say I have diabetes, you don't look at me as a, like, there's still other parts about Abu that have nothing to do with that.
It's true.
You know, so I think we have to treat mental illness the same way, to say, because even with physical diseases, they had to do research. They had to come up with names. That's why there's like 1 million terms of diseases, so that we can be able to manage the diseases. Because when you have a name for something, then you're able to engage with it separately. Because you can't get same treatment for TB that you get for cancer. It has to be separate. So it, like, when you name things like that, it makes it easy for you to navigate or to manage those things. So I think these labels come from because of the stigma in society, because of how society handles mental illness. This is why now people feel like, I don't want to be labeled, because of how you're gonna use that word.
It's true.
You know, to describe that person. And we don't do the same with other illnesses. Like if I'm diabetic, I don't go around, you know, like you don't look at me as a TB a person with TB or a person with cancer. You still see me as Aru, but with mental illness,
it somehow becomes you are placed in a box.
Exactly.
And it's like you can't function out of that box.
That's because
that's all we see.
It's because she's like this. That time maybe it has nothing to do with that. So I think we have to kind of like learn to really understand these labels, to understand why to start to use them differently. Because I feel like people are shying away from them because of how they're used. Because now you're identifying people as those particular mental illnesses, because there's so much to a human being. There is so much to a human being than what they're struggling from. Because that's exactly what it is. It's just what they're struggling with, what they're battling with. It's not who they are
or all that they are
as a person. There is more to them than that. So I hope we'll be a better society. I hope we'll have a different view on this thing, and we'll handle it with care, you know, so that we don't keep hurting each other, we don't keep misleading each other, you know, that by the time I want to talk about something, that at least I must have enough information to talk about it. Because I battle with these things. I had to process trauma, but I still research. I still listen to professors, people that did research for many years, so that I understand better. Because I'm not the only person who was traumatized as a child, and there's probably someone who had the same experience as me, that are presenting, like the person's presenting something that's totally different from what I'm presenting. Yes, there might be similarities there and there, but at the end of the day, we might not be presenting the same things. So that information, that knowledge is very important before we engage in these kind of conversations, and just to really show grace, guys. Like, I feel like this topic needs a lot of grace. It needs a lot of, we dismiss it too much, and it's such a big part of society. Like, people are struggling out here, but we keep dismissing this topic. So, do you want to have something
In
like some last
conclusion,
words?
yes, I wanted to, I think I'm to ask, to plead for the people that are struggling and battling with mental health issues, as vast and as different as they are, to, and I know it can get irritating and annoying, but please don't grow tired of helping people and teaching them and kind of catching them out. Like, catch me out. If I'm saying something and it's off and it's not okay, like, be like, Lutho. But you know, let's not grow tired of correcting people in the small spaces that we have, because I think we all have voices to kind of help each other understand one another better. And let's use the small little platforms that we have. If someone throws something at you at work, oh yeah, it's because of your anxiety, just stop for a second and be like, hey, sorry, but let's kind of let's correct one another, because then it creates a lot of kind of anger and resentment and irritation, because then it's like, oh, that's all they see me as. But sometimes we are ignorant and uneducated, and we need a little bit of help. So I think in our everyday life, just when you feel like that's a little bit off, or that's not correct, or that's not okay, or I'm not comfortable with it, say it. Let people know. Let's teach one another.
Wow. That is so true, and thank you so much, Lutho. Like, we can talk for days. Like, thank you so much for your wisdom, and just how you have your own battles. Like, I don't know if you have but from what I know, I don't know if you do, but I love the support that you show to people that actually, like me, your friend, like the support you've been showing me with this situation that I was battling, like the support that you give, even though you don't have full understanding, but you're willing to want to understand. And I can see from what you're saying that you really, like, you're exposing yourself to the information, like you have an understanding, and now you're able to approach this situation with a whole lot of grace, because there's a whole lot of understanding. So if you don't understand, you can mess up, and you can mess relationships that you have with people. And even on on my side, and people that maybe battle, it's also our job to, like you're saying, to communicate, to say, oh, so actually that's not what it is, this is what it is, because then I'm helping you to know how to help me better, and to help the next person as well. So thank you so much.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you very much. I hope you guys enjoyed this conversation. Do subscribe, do share, do comment,
and like.
and like. Bye.
Thank you.